Good evening, members. Welcome to the delivery of private and housing stock task and finish group. I'd like to welcome you all to this new group. I'm going to take item 1 of the agenda is apologies for absence. I haven't received any apologies. Oh, Sue Hodgson is unable to attend this evening. Apologies there. Item 2 is the appointment of chair. Do I have any nominations for chair, please?
I was actually going to nominate Neil, but Neil's not here.
Yeah, I'll nominate James.
Lee, would you like to?
I think, yeah, because I'll tell you what I think. I think the chair and the vice chair, the housing, because this is a task group of it, shouldn't be the chair or the vice chair.
Watson, can you put your mic on? Put your mic on, put your mic on, Lynn.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to attempt to nominate Councillor Watson.
I second it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Would you like to now lead the meeting?
Thank you. So, should we appoint that of vice chair? I nominate. Go on.
I nominate Joyce. Councillor Renton.
Councillor Vettel?
Thank you.
So, purpose of this committee. Has everybody read at the moment the terms of reference? So the key areas we'll be focusing on is the capacity to deliver major projects in regard to private housing stocks and major new builds, looking at those partnerships who successfully delivered homes, those partnerships and where non-successful. Is everybody in agreement with the terms of reference? Yeah?
Sure.
Jane?
So I just wonder if it's an opportunity just to broaden the terms of reference out ever so slightly. Because I know we're talking about capacity, but just to give officers clarity, that might be helpful if we're just a bit more specific to help officers when they're busy drafting information. So I think, broadly speaking, in my mind, it was kind of 5 areas. It was the vital regeneration areas that we feel that we have to do. So, for example, Blackshots Towers. It's the regeneration housing projects that we would like to do but are, frankly, discretionary, like Whiteacres. It's the private-public partnerships, so, for example, PCRL. The areas that are 100% private, of which there are lots certainly in Stamford. And then the 5th area is obviously the HRA council-led area.
I'm happy with that. Is anybody second that?
There might be areas of housing delivery that I'm not aware of or that I've missed.
We might pick some things up as we go on, mightn't we?
Okay.
Yeah.
Olivia.
I just wanted to clarify, because I think the first one you mentioned, so where Blackshots fall in, that is also HRA. So it might be just overlap on that term.
Yeah, I was just reflecting on the working group that we had the other day when you were saying that we're for the procurement of contracts, we're now looking at a partnership model because of how you're having to reprofile the HRA. So I thought it might just be helpful if we look at the HRA in 2 sections in terms of the areas of housing development that you feel has to be done versus the areas that we would like to do that are perhaps slightly more discretionary or not speculative, aspirational in nature. Because there must clearly be a divide in terms of order of priority.
That's fine, I understand, that's clear now. Thank you, Councillor Halden. I just wanted to check, because I want this to be linked really well with the Planning, Transport and Regeneration Committee. So is that not becoming a little bit too housing? I think it's a bigger picture here as well, isn't it? Are we reflecting that?
I was going to say chair then. So to be honest, in PTR right now, we are asking coming forward that are not really housing land, even though that is something we need to be considered, on the agenda for PTR is quite more substantial than that on those projects that are not gone very well, and that's in the pipeline, major projects that are in the pipeline that have not come through yet. So Black Shots, we haven't even started to talk about that right now, but what I am interested in is Black Shots will be coming forward, and it should come forward, and what should be happening is it's a bit of a dovetail approach, whereas on regeneration, we should be talking about the land and the aspirations of what the planning should be, and then it's handed over into housing to actually make sure it's delivered. But at the moment, that is not really happening, and it's going a bit of the other way round. So we do know what's there in terms of what is already been committed, but I'm interested in what needs to be committed, and with the no sight of a local plan or anyone on the near horizon at the moment, we're bit stuck at the moment with a finger in the air. So I'd like to get at this what the plan would be, and we can relay that back into regeneration. And I'm really happy for anybody to actually, I will speak to the chair, and I'm really happy for anybody in this committee to come and have that conversation from the housing front anyway, because I think it'd be really useful.
Just with Black Shots, there are a lot of things happening with Black Shots. It might not have come to planning yet, but there are a lot of things still working towards that. So there is a lot of things happening. People are being decanted out there as we speak. So it's all those things that are just going on.
So, Evelyn, to address your concern to try and make it more balanced, what is it as members we can do? Do we need to either reach out to the PTR committee and ask for perhaps a couple of other PTR members to join this committee? Do we need to ask for specific officers to come and support you? Because I'm aware at the moment all of this is the housing team to draft. So what is it we need to practically do to reach out to other people to broaden it for you?
Sort of exactly the 2 points you mentioned. I think it will only work if it's a joint one as a task and finish. And so absolutely sort of support from councillors that sit, and I know that you do, but councillors did, a few more in number for that, and obviously officer commitment. I mean, that there are at the moment obviously personal changes, but this will be going for a lot longer than the current vacancy. So, yes.
So we've kind of suggested a work plan. Do we need to? I mean, obviously, as members, we can talk to other members who are on PTR. Do we also need to, perhaps through the chair, write to officers in Regen and ask them to support housing officers in drafting the information for us?
So I will ask Mark Bradbury, because I think he would be the one that needs to decide which officers will be coming here. I can talk to the chair of PTR, and then there should be another representative that comes forward from PTR, and that individual should really be like one of the Conservative Party, because I'm the Labour from there, and then we can come up with a plan. But I also think that you probably need to dovetail into the local plan as well, because as I said, we haven't got one, and you're looking at land, and at the moment it's very, very pepper pot and whatever the developers are bringing through right now, as opposed to what we want and need.
And just to add, we've got a little bit of a presentation, and we will tell you about the development that we have, development strategy that we've been considering, and these are exactly the sort of points that we're making, that we have got to have those links with local plan, that the borough needs more of a strategic view on that. So these are absolutely the things that we're up against as well.
So can we also look at all products of housing? That includes shared ownership as well within the mix, not just outright ownership and social housing and affordable, but I'd like the shared ownership side to come into it as well. Is that okay? Councillor Redfield?
Yeah, we mentioned it the other day, didn't I? mention it to you, Evelina. There's not a lot of housing associations coming to Thurrock, so perhaps we need to look a bit more inviting, to invite them to us, so there isn't anybody coming through like that. It was mentioned at our other task and finish group the other night. So I think, and as you're saying about planning and transport, we need people in front of us because there's questions we need to ask. So if we haven't got those people in front of us, we can't ask it. So I think we've done the same with the other task and finish group. You know, there needs to be, it's a bit like planning, not having water authorities and everything else in front of you. You can't ask them questions, can you?
Did you say you have a presentation to show us? Would you like to go ahead?
So I will very briefly introduce that. So this was the very first overseas meeting. What we wanted to tell you about is two things. This was meant to be a joint presentation by Julian. Julian is here, and Keith Andrews. Keith Andrews, unfortunately, is unwell, so unable to attend in person, but we have got, and we will talk to that presentation. So this is a little bit of a sort of look back on the housing schemes that we have delivered, a little bit of the sort of lessons learned, things that went well, things that didn't go necessarily that well as well. So this is sort of the stuff that we've done to date. And Julian will talk to you a lot more about the development strategy that I mentioned that we are trying to bring about, and the sort of route to get there, and the issues that collectively we need to iron out and discuss. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Julian.
Chair, can I just come in there? Those pictures we showed.
Julian, do you want to continue?
I will. Am I on? You are. I am. Super. So, sorry, would you just go back to the front? So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Julian Wayne. I have been helping Thurrock on a part-time basis for getting on for 2 years now. And actually, some of you may know, of course, this is my second time. I did a piece of work here about 5 or 6 years ago. So, I'm relatively well known to you. And my background is housing and regeneration. So, as Evelina says, I'll take you through the slides. She's going to help me with some of the schemes that I don't know. And I didn't interject on your discussion of a moment or two ago, but what I will do, as well as telling you about the work that's going on, I thought it might also be worthwhile me flagging some things that you might want to do as part of your scrutiny of this issue. And actually, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, that is very definitely, because I've been to that one, that's Beaconsfield. But interestingly, Councillor Edsel says she doesn't like it. One of the things you might want to do is go and look at some of these, actually, and see, you know, what elements of design you might want to carry forward and what bits you might not. So,
Sorry, Julian. Sorry, Chair. I think we just can't really. It looks more like a school than people living there, and sort of 3 trees. That's it. You know, it's like.
We can deal with that as we go
that's
along. Is that okay?
Get me saying.
okay, so next one, please. So I thought the first thing to do was perhaps just to set out for you that actually you're embarking on quite a complicated task at the moment, because there's a lot of moving parts in Thurrock at the moment. And a lot of these are not necessarily either firmed up in tablets of stone or indeed necessarily endorsed. But this slide is in essence my understanding of what's coming to you in a policy context. You're going to have a new corporate or a new council plan. I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be called, but you're going to have one. And underneath that, I think the thinking is that you'll almost certainly have a place strategy for the borough as a whole. And Evelina and I have been charged with working with Mark Bradbury to start scoping that and thinking about what it might look like. And of course, again, as that develops, and of course that is going to be housing and regeneration and one or two other things as well, economic development and the like. Again, that might be something that you might want to look at, so that you're not just looking at the housing field. Local plan's already been mentioned. Local plan is critical. Again, I would suggest that you would look at that. And actually, in terms of development of housing, be it private or be it housing, revenue account housing, the local plan and what you're prepared to put and where you're prepared to put it and how much you want of it is absolutely critical. And then Evelina mentioned the housing development strategy. We have been working on a document for some time. I'm going to touch on some of the sort of headlines out of it. In the fullness of time, I'm sure that will be published, and certainly we can talk as the weeks go on about various aspects of it. And as I say, I'll touch on some of that tonight. But I think, in one sense, your timing is unfortunate, because of course all of that is going on. It's all not very clear, and actually it makes your task of setting the way forward quite complex at the moment. But that's the key policy context. So some key steps, key issues. I'm talking now particularly about housing delivery. It seems to me, and it's certainly part of the developing strategy, that these are the key steps now. Obviously, everything is filtered through the prism of the intervention and the developing financial strategy. And the outcomes of that and the time that your constraints financially last is going to determine everything that you do in terms of development, because clearly borrowing and funding and all those sorts of things become very difficult in the present context. And then out of that, of course, what can you do, what can you afford to do, and what will be the council's appetite for risk. And I'm talking in this particular slide principally about local authority development, but the philosophy of your council plan: are you going to continue to be a delivery council, deliverer of housing and major projects, or actually are you going to enable other people to do them? And the point was made a moment or two ago about housing associations. You haven't got a strong track record of housing associations in Thurrock. My deliberations and inquiries haven't found entirely clearly why that is, because I do know associations who would like to work here and work with you, but that's never really come off in the past. Deliver it yourself, but you enable it. You can get people like housing associations to do stuff for you. It will be important, and I'm not going to labour this too much, but you're going to need to get appropriate governance in to make sure that development is appropriate, that values are correct, that budgets are affordable, and that this is properly controlled at the appropriate level by both members and officers. And just as an aside, there could be a temptation to bring things to yourselves too early, actually, before proper preparation and proper work has been done. And I think that getting the appropriate level of governance, getting it clear when it goes, where it goes, how it's audited is really quite important. Prioritisation. Shared ownership was mentioned a moment or two ago, and one of the things that I believe that the council needs to do is it really does need to prioritise what it wants to do. I think ultimately, up to now, broadly, the ambition has been to provide affordable housing and try and combat the affordability gap. Now, that ambition, which I think I concluded was where the council was, took some finding and took some establishing, because it wasn't entirely clear that that was the case. There was a view that you could make money out of development. There was a view that you would do private housing as well if you could. And none of that is necessarily wrong, but the important thing is you do set out very clearly what you want to achieve and what you're trying to get. And take, just by way of example, take a site that is not a housing revenue account site. It's a piece of council land. There needs to be a decision. Are we trying to provide affordable housing on it? Are we trying to make income out of it? Are we trying to do that by ourselves or by others? And that prioritisation piece and that communication of that prioritisation piece is going to be very important. Chair, did you want me to pause? And
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. That's really helpful. I think in terms of key steps, the main reason this group was set up was to discuss our capacity to deliver. And I think this needs to be a very hard-nosed conversation, because as much as things like the local plan is important and these items are important, in many ways the local plan is ethereal. The local plan is speculative aspiration. It's a framework to direct development, but it is in theory just a document. It's our internal capacity to either nurture the market or directly intervene ourselves that we want to discuss. Now, there are lots of issues I'm sure as members we're concerned about. PCRL, over a decade now, and we've yet to see major development. I've seen master plans for areas like Corringham. I saw master plans for medical centres when I was the portfolio holder that assured me that they were totally financially sound. Our capacity to deliver or monitor these projects has been shockingly weak in the past. Whereas you can compare and contrast that to other items. Transforming homes has gone pretty well. Areas like Head Start housing, that has been a very significant success. So that's what this group needs to see. We need to see what our internal capacity is, because frankly, I'm not interested in creating the greatest local plan or the greatest delivery arm in the world if we're not actually capable of then following that through into practical application. So it needs to be a review of where we sit as a unitary, not just the current financial restraints we're under, but our capacity, given the size of our unitary, the skill set we've got internally, the officers we've got. For, to this day, if officers put a plan in front of me and say, we're going to build 5,000 council homes, I don't personally know what skill set we have internally. I don't know if that's something we're capable of doing. I know I'm not capable of doing it, but I know my capacity.
beautifully timely, because of course the next one there is resource and delivery mechanisms. Now, I mean, I will give you an answer to your question in a moment, but I think one of the things you perhaps should do over the next few sessions is draw your own conclusions as to your capacity. The one point I would make before I actually answer your question is, to some extent, your level of capacity depends on what you want to do. Because actually, if you're going to enable everything through a housing association, you need a relatively slim in-house team. But if you're going to deliver it and you're going to manage every set of the building, then obviously you will need more people. The broad answer to your... Sorry, Ken.
Sorry, can I just come in on that? Because the BPI report was very clear that we can't manage major schemes. That was one of the major things that came out of it. What you're saying is, and Councillor Halden's right, if you've got 500 homes or 250 homes, we can't do that. So that means we have to then go into joint venture world, and hopefully we get a partner that can actually deliver. So where I'm sitting right now, and I am making my pre-decision judgment, we in this council are not capable or got the skill set to deliver that. However, I'm not saying that we haven't got the capability and the skills to commission that. They're very two different things. And I think that's where me and Councillor Halden are sitting right now, is we want to know, have we got the capability to commission, and who would that be to deliver big projects? Or if we're not and it has to stay within the council, what would we be able to deliver? If it's 50 homes, tell us 50 homes. If it's 100 or even if it's 20, that's what we need to know. But we have got in Section 114, we're not stupid, we all know that. We all know the BVI report has come out and said how bad major projects we can't do. So it's just about giving a reassurance of us, because we have got a housing shortage market everywhere, UK, regardless of what. And the developers that are coming in here now are housing associations with no nomination rights. So I just need to know, we need to know how that's going to work going forward. And with all the best will in the world, PCRL has not worked. And I can't see it working. So that's another decision on another day in another what's going to happen with that company. So I think that, if I'm right there, Council, is what we're basically trying to work out, what we can do, because we do need to deliver housing.
I don't want to go against you, Lee, but I think we have got the capabilities to do it. But usually it's small projects we do better.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, and I know I keep saying it, but Chadwell was one of the ones that the things that come back from that is only good. You know, to say how good it was. Why are we not doing more like that? Because we could do that across the borough. You know,
That's what I've said.
we can take on those sort of things. I know we have got a big one with black shots. That is going to be massive, but that's obviously the HRA. But I think we are capable of doing some things. I think this is just whatever's happened has set us back in doing anything now, because we're all getting a bit jittery now at what we can do. But I think we are capable.
No, that's what, if you listen to what I actually said, that's what I said. I said it's like, if we can't deliver 500 homes. We can't. Black shots, I doubt if we can deliver that. But there's not to say that we can't commission that. No, there's not to say we can't commission that. There's two different things. And that's what I think people need to realise. There's a difference between commissioning and delivering. We can get the same thing, but personally, you want to hold somebody to account more than we can. That's why we're in the place we are. But we're trying to move forward, and I personally don't want tiny little developments. We want neighbourhood developments. We want good, sustainable developments. You know, that's what we want. But more importantly, what does a housing strategy tell us we want? Ryan, what does a housing strategy tell us that we need for this borough?
More houses, Lee.
Yeah,
No,
lots.
but what?
Lee, just going back on that, small developments are good, because that bit in Chadwell, you couldn't have put anything else on it anyway. And that then joins in with the rest of Chadwell. You know, it's be able to take that community with it. And I think that those sort of things we do need. All right, we need bigger developments, but housing associations can come in at no cost to the council. You know, they will come in, certain housing associations, and it won't be any cost to us at all.
Yeah, without wanting to get bogged down in, this project is good, this project is bad, I think Julian made a very pertinent point a couple of minutes ago when he said that it depends how you want to do it. Is this contained in the HRA, in which case you need a slim structure? Is it as a commission? And the chair touched on it as well, because I think that there's a mistaken belief at times that if we are simply a commissioner and not a deliverer, things will automatically work. There are plenty of examples where we have commissioned and it's been our inability to negotiate or our inability to monitor contracts accurately that has been our undoing. And it was certainly something that bedevilled me when I was Cabinet Member for Social Care. Evelina recently came to Housing Overview and Scrutiny and made a very forensic case for why elements of the hostel service should be in-house, our ability to flex up and down based on demand. Now, that was clearly an example of where the housing team have looked at a situation and decided that trying to commission externally hasn't worked. We know what the demand is, we know what requirements are, we can control this strictly. And I think one of the things that we are now looking at you for is saying to us, if regardless if this is HRA or if this is external, when we're talking about capacity, I'm not just talking about how many officers have we got to master plan an area. I'm talking about the skill set to negotiate and enforce. Because frankly, you mentioned PCRL chair. I think it's, it is a case in point that in the past, over the last 10, 15 years, there clearly should have been more force from officialdom, the bureaucracy in the council, in terms of the corporate arm, saying we're starting to get worried about not seeing certain milestones being hit here. So it's not just about us choosing, do we do it in-house? Well, that's a bit old hat. Our future is being leaner and being a commissioner. Being a commissioner, I don't think, should be seen as a silver bullet or an easier ride. I certainly know you're not saying that, but I think we need to be clear that as this group does its work, our capacity conversation isn't simply about in-house, out-of-house. I'm concerned about our ability to control commissioners, to monitor them, to hold them to account, to make sure they deliver what it is that we actually want for the borough.
I mean, I think that is hopefully helpful for Evelina and colleagues in spelling out your requirements, because I think, and I don't walk away from you need to decide what you want to do, because it does determine the size of the approach and the skills of the approach. But I think it is fair to say, well, no, I know it is fair to say, that be it direct delivery or be it commissioning and negotiations, and in some instances through no fault of the council, because you've had a fair amount of change and transition of people, but your skills are relatively limited and you are relatively short of numbers. And I doubt I'm telling you anything new, but sometimes that's what you have people like me to do, to play it back to you. And so, let us say for the sake of argument that one of our ambitions is to deliver large-scale projects, then one way or the other you will need to gear up, and that does take us to delivery mechanisms and to the chair's point about, are we in joint venture territory, are we in partnerships, are you doing it through RSLs alone? And I have to say, and I didn't know that to be the case, but if you are getting associations in and they're not giving you nomination rights, then that is illustrative of your lack of skill set, because that, on your ground, that should not be the case. So it is important. And the last bullet point up there is just about tackling constraints. I mean, there are any number of constraints that are operating on you at the moment, and in many instances, this is not about Thurrock, this is national. Build costs at the moment, as we know, are through the roof. Property values in Thurrock and elsewhere have not kept pace with that, which makes private sector delivery difficult. Doesn't help with the public sector delivery either, actually. You have some challenges to think about parking, about height, about density. And I don't say what is the right answer to that, but there is no doubt that if you constrain, then you get less, and it makes it. So some of those things that need to be thought about.
I hate you.
But you've heard me say it before, Councillor.
Yeah.
So that was the two slides that I specifically had done for you, and we'll talk about what you've done thus far now. Keith's team, either directly through his own team or with TRL, and basically TRL is the council in disguise. It isn't really an independent body, but has provided housing development from the beginning to the end, finding sites. I'm pretty certain that you have got lots of other sites you can look at, and I think there's some work to be done with property to look further at that. You might want to ask them that in the course of your deliberations. The team does the feasibility studies, lots of resident consultation. I have to say my observation thus far is I think you're quite strong on that. I could be proved wrong, but I think it's been quite effective, what I've seen thus far, and the policies and the plans. Bringing stuff to planning, both obviously through the pre-application process, procuring the main contractor, and completion, and then post-handover. Thank you, Jenny. So, giving you some thoughts about what has worked well, and Evelina's going to help me out with this.
That's right. So this is within the team is what we thought that has actually worked pretty well. So in terms of this particular site, so what we felt was quite interesting for that one is the resident engagement and the sort of design of those plans with residents and the sort of flexibility to respond to what the community was saying. So it was the new sort of first time we've used the new consultation strategy, which was the one that we took to housing over in scrutiny over a year ago now. So this was the plan that you might recall. It was a debate between Councillor Warren and Councillor Spillman and going for a few kind of months. So it was member first, but very early engagement at the very early stages, so that everyone was sort of cited, aware, had the chance to challenge, contribute, so that when we were going out to consultation with the community, with residents there, members were sort of on board, and that's sort of both parties as well as ward councillors. So initially, this particular plan, this particular site had a lot of resident opposition, but through that in-depth engagement, we actually managed to turn the kind of minds and hearts of those residents. We've adapted the proposals to reflect what the community wanted as the priorities, what was that for them. And in the end, we had sort of broad acceptance for the plan as we're then sort of redrafted, reshaped. So in terms of what went well with this particular site, and obviously, it has not been built out, just in case you're wondering, but obviously, as we were saying, there's a very detailed and very sort of rightly so engaged process to go through when shaping those plans. So in the end, we look at it as a template for any future engagements. This is the one I think, Councillor Retzel, you talk about quite a lot. I haven't done my mic, sorry about that.
It, Evelyn.
Yeah. So, Heatland Close, Claudian Way. Again, this was that bit of land that was just laying there, empty, relatively small, next to a sheltered housing scheme. And again, what we think that went well there was that sort of engagement with the community, what the community wanted. The community wanted bungalows, and I think only bungalows. We've managed to accommodate quite a number of bungalows, 21 if I remember correctly. We have kept the flatted elements of that development very low as well, so it blends in nicely as you sort of visit the area with the surroundings. We wanted to ensure that we don't create sort of additional problem in terms of overcrowding, so that's where the sort of the policy approach to what the housing need is, how we allocate, and all of those things that come with it. That site attracted antisocial behaviour, just lay vacant there, and had all sorts of sort of things going on there together with fly tipping and whatnot, so it addressed that, a sore point. There is a nice environmental touch. There's really nice greenery that got planted. There was also an element of art added. This was again community led and community sort of designed. There is also parking next to the homes, and obviously, as Julian said, it's something that, as a council, we all need to sort of agree on to what we would like to see as a parking policy going forward. But in this particular case, this is very strongly coming through the community engagement, and we've managed to allocate that. And we've prioritised local people, which was again a very important point. And I know Ryan takes a lot of pride in that engagement with the local community there as to who had the first kind of dips, so to speak, to bid for those properties or to be able to be transferred into those properties. So we wanted to keep local people within that community. So that's that continues. So this is now the view of that block. So yes, 21 bungalows, as we said. New households, so it's a good mix of people moving locally, but also setting up new households, all with parking. And I've mentioned that environment sort of impact of that scheme. That tree looks small; they're a lot bigger now. And we have created a template for local lettings policy, and wherever we can, we endeavour to adopt it on any new scheme that it also is delivered. It has won awards as well, that scheme. It is out of defects, fully within our management now. It has attracted grant funding from Homes England. It's one of the sites that Homes England also visited, I think, a year ago or so, with the chair and the chief exec. So something that they are also proud that they have helped to deliver locally. So and that is the one that Councillor Retzel really likes us talking about.
Everybody comes back to me and says what it's like.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we have also delivered through housing development a sort of. There are always bits of land where other things are on, and use for them maybe have become redundant over times. So Alma Court, not too far from here, former Tops Club, social club that was redeveloped into 21 new homes, parking, new play area, and again blends really nicely with the surrounding estate. We have got really good feedback, people living there. We've got some of our staff members as well actually living there. So it was sort of, and it's been 4 years now, 4 years I think, 3 and a bit, 4. But yeah, about 3, 4, yeah. So it's sort of weathering well as well and all that. Lowen Road in Chadwell, it was a one big family house with 5 bedrooms and loads of garden in a sort of a bit of a triangular plot. The house itself was adapted for a particular family. The family moved out, and it was such a level of adaptations that we simply couldn't find a sort of next family with the same level, because those adaptations are always very specific to individuals' needs.
They were army houses in that road.
Yeah. So we put together a plan to put in new 4 houses there. I think we started with 5 at some point. Again, taking feedback, residents' feedback, councillors' feedback. We have now got 4 new homes being delivered there. They're due to hand over imminently. I want to say next week. It is probably going to be a week or so from now. And we have also agreed through the Housing Owners Scrutiny a local lettings policy for some of those units there. So again, something that is delivered on time, is delivered and it is being delivered despite the sort of problems with the build cost and things like that. So we're sort of very, very proud of that we are still in business, so to speak. The next one is Beaconsfield Place, Tilbury. So that was the very first picture from the beginning of the presentation. 36 sheltered housing flats on the site of the former Tilbury Market. Again, a plot of land that was just attracting a bit of antisocial behaviour, if anything else, and a bit of a sore site there. We try and what we think that the team does well on the housing delivery site is that there's a lot of coordination around the design and development, and I think you Julian, were going to talk a little bit about that. So yeah, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, we said earlier that the development service, and I mean, let nobody be in any doubt, your current housing development service is direct delivery. It's the council doing direct delivery. But we said earlier that it does concept to completion, it does the pre-planning engagement, and it does the multi-service review. And I think one of the strengths of it is that it does work across services. It works with property, it works with planning, sometimes with a greater or lesser degree of success. It's worked pretty successfully with finance in terms of the budgetary management, by my observation. But it will be important, whatever your approach, in terms of building your capacity, that where those silos still exist, that is broken down, and that coordinated design and development can go forward and be built upon. You have delivered some high quality stuff, you've got some awards, and it has been a consistent approach. We've worked through the REBA stages, through the architects' stages. Housing, by which I mean the housing management, has tended to lead the employer's requirements, and you've had a standard contractual approach. So it's been a sensible and detailed approach. One of the things you need to think about, whichever route you take, but bearing in mind build costs, there has been a praiseworthy ambition of the council to be an exemplar developer, high quality specifications, leading the way in terms of the quality, and in the fullness of time you're going to have to think, actually financially, do you have the capacity to push it as hard as you are, or actually, you know, if you look at your lifetime costings, are you gaining by much? So I think just to pick up on Councillor Halden's point earlier, talked about capacity in terms of numbers, capacity in terms of skills, but coming back to my earlier remarks, it is also going to be about capacity in terms of resources. What can you afford to do, I think. Next one, please, Jenny.
So we then go into the areas for improvement, because I see this is a presentation about what went well, what didn't go that well. So this is a site that remains vacant as we speak. So we were trying to jointly work with the private sector here and deliver something at the place of the Kolkata Club. It was privately owned, it was derelict building. A private developer was seeking a joint approach with the council, and we worked on that with them. Obviously, we've gone as far as sort of agreeing designs, getting the sort of full construction and contract agreements in place, all of the options. However, there has been delays in making decisions at various sort of levels, across officer, across sort of councillor, across planning. Concerns were raised around cost and potential risks. So the site owner ended up removing the site, and it remains vacant. So there's definitely something that I don't know whether you've got any more to add on this, but there's definitely something there that hasn't worked, and we should.
So I was just going to add, this comes back to the governance point that I made earlier. This is not about saying we needed to move quickly without authority or with anything along those lines, because that would be inappropriate. But what this is saying is about get the governance correct and get it an agile and flexible system so you can take the opportunity in a proper manner. And so again, it comes down to making sure that the processes are right. Because there are no doubt other examples of this. This is the one, but you know, there will be other opportunities that will come up, and it's about being able to respond quickly and appropriately.
I know a little bit less about that, and Keith would be able to talk about a bit more, but we have tried to set up a bit of a sort of framework or a partnership with local SMEs. And it was all about trying to get their knowledge to help us to identify sites that would meet our requirements for building out. There was, it was a national pilot, we took part in it. There was funding available for the work of that framework. We have advertised the sort of that setup locally, nationally. There's not been a one bid, there's not been one submission, there's not been sort of one sort of area or line of inquiry through that. So there is something definitely out there, in particular if we are going to play a lot stronger role in the enabling, in trying to get those sort of frameworks off the ground better, interest others out there who would want to come out and work with us or alongside us. I don't know if there's anything else Julian can add to that. So this is probably, that ties in really nicely with what Julian was saying. So what we've learned with the sort of, in particular, working with the private sector, is we need to be very clear what we actually want, and it kind of goes back to that question: what do we actually want? And by that I mean whether it's for housing stock or whether it's for the borough in overall. And what are the sort of parameters in red line? So very often, in particular at Tilbury, there was a lot of sort of, what do we want it to look like? What's the red line? What are the areas we just no-go for us to consider? And then what's our appetite for risk and reward? And I think nowadays we will be even more careful in terms of taking on the risk, because obviously the fuller role we play in any project, the more risk naturally we take on board, and perhaps this is where we will now want to ensure that there is a slightly less risk on the council part in any sort of future project with the private sector. What we thought is the early corporate support, again, what we've already mentioned with Julian, it goes back to the governance processes as well as the sort of resources that are available for us for those sort of projects that we would need to tap into. And the decision making, again, I'm not going to sort of dwell on it as well. And we also felt that we need to really understand the private sector's drivers a bit more, because obviously when we go, and as Julian said, it took him quite a lot of conversations to get even to the point that we want to be actually delivering affordable housing, and there were a number of differing views. So it seemed to us that we need to decide and debate what we need for us, what's the driver for us as local authority and social housing provider, local authority with the housing hat on, and then we need to go into the better understanding what the private sector's drivers are for themselves. It's got nothing to do with furthering of our sort of ambition and plan.
And if I may, two observations just to add. One is this does link back to Councillor Haldon's point about skills, because dealing with this is a skill set, and your average local authority officer doesn't have them, and it is important to recognise that. And then the other thing, just maybe a hint for you in further deliberations, if you're going to have a look at the Perfleet vehicle, some of those questions will be very relevant to be asking.
And obviously for the Perfleet vehicle, just also to put it on record, it would be definitely Mark Bradbury's area, and somebody then to talk about that a lot more. It wouldn't be something that within housing development I could talk to. So Beaconsfield Place, I'll go back to what didn't go that well with that one. I mean, I've obviously noting your point, your opinion, you didn't like it. But so there was a change. So this goes back to the point we need to know what we want to do from the outset. So this was delivered to Happy design sort of principles. So these are, and I'm going to read it out because I never remember it, housing for ageing population, panel for innovation. This is what HAPPY stands for. I'm never going to be able to remember that. But essentially, this is meant to be a lifetime home that adapts. So you will have, as a very kind of practical example, wide corridors within the property and wider doors. So you don't need the adaptations just yet, but as the house ages with you, you might need at some point. We all might do. So it was designed to such standards, but it wasn't designed as sheltered housing. Sheltered housing as we have got it in our stock. So we needed to enter into those light changes to the design, because obviously a decision was made that it will be a different sort of denomination for that housing. What we've also looked at, you can't really see it through those pictures, but the picture on the left, there are steps, for example. There are a few ways to enter into the development, the way the land goes, and we've created really nice landscaped areas as well, raised and whatnot. But by doing that, there are then steps, and some of the properties, I think there are 4 that are duplexes, if I remember correctly. Again, duplex for a sheltered housing scheme is a difficult to let, which is why we did some a different approach to letting, and it's a bit more sensitive lets there. In that way, you've got the sort of mobility issues. People find it difficult to actually bid for it and then want to live there. And then other things that needed to have been changed in terms of showers, carpets, sprinklers in individual flats, not just communal areas. There is a bit of a distance to go to deposit your rubbish. It is a really nice room. It's all nicely laid out. It's out of sight, but it means that from individual property, you do need to carry it for a bit. Again, if we knew that this was a sheltered housing scheme from the outset, it probably would be a different design, and we needed to change that design. And as I mentioned already, the duplex flats took longer to let. There was also an increase of cost as a result of those changes, because the moment you want to introduce a change to a contract that is already let, you then obviously, as you'd expect, there will be a cost associated with it. So that is definitely something that did not go that well. We took a separate report on Beaconsfield alone as lessons learned to open scrutiny last municipal year, and we were sort of open and transparent about those items there. So if I remember correctly, that brings us to the end of the presentation on the sort of housing delivery by sort of housing development team and the sort of ventures out there into the private sector.
Sorry. Regarding the builds that you've already done, do you sort of now go back and speak to the residents to see how they feel? Because that Beaconsfield Centre in Tilbury, there's a lot of issues there with the general public. So, you know, are you on top of that sort of thing to learn the lessons? I know you said about, obviously, the waste. That comes up quite a lot there, you know. It's a big issue. And there's some houses, doors on the front downstairs, and they got a lot of issues with youngsters, you know, banging on the doors and things. So that's something else we can learn, to not build them like that.
So we did, for that particular one, we did post-completion survey, I think it's called. We have done survey satisfaction around the letting and the moving in process. And we have, I think, helped focus group at Beaconsfield, if I remember, just looking at you, Ryan, because you were quite instrumental in it. But yes, it is definitely then fed into our kind of bank of lessons if designing something like that, what to avoid. We continue working with the community there. There is definitely antisocial behaviour, and those items you mentioned, the sort of, it's very close to the street, that doesn't seem to want to stop. It was a lot more prevalent actually when the scheme was first, when people first started moving in. I think after the initial pretty difficult 3 months, I think, for residents, with all sorts of things going on, you know, kids throwing things into windows and, you know, broken glass, all that. This sort of subsided a bit, and the local police and working together, that has helped us a lot. There's been a lot of patrolling and things like that, but it's still not without issues. Overall, I think it's the sort of, the more we do these things, but also the more kind of development like that. I mean, this is a Tilbury, sort of quite a busy street in Tilbury. So but there is still space really there. So the more kind of new development is done, I think you will also see a change in the community as well. But yes, all of this is absolutely on our sort of massive lessons learned list to what to do and not to do, sort of going forward.
Anything else? Okay. Nice.
Councillor Redfield.
Did you do that in Tilbury because the housing was needed in Tilbury, or was it just a piece of land that we picked for that?
The housing is needed everywhere in Thurrock. Well.
It's having the land. I'm probably one of those councillors who can remember when we, in Blackshots, we had 2-storey flats were for the elderly people, and the people who were a bit handicapped lived. People who lived on the bottom floor who couldn't get up the stairs, and now we've reversed that, and we haven't got them for older people now. So we've lost all those
two-storey flats. So we're now having to rethink that again. I'm not sure we're being broad enough, and it's good to see things like that coming forward. But I don't think we're looking broadly enough for anything. I travel quite a lot, and we've got like mobile homes which are being built really, really well now, and we're not doing anything like that at all. Danton has got a big, massive one, which it's making bigger, and that's the sort of thing that people might like, So it's I think we're not giving perhaps people the options enough, we're just building certain things and we're not looking at other things. Perhaps we should widen, our narrative and look a bit more at some things.
Okay, so Culver Centre, which is a very interesting one. My house looks really good on there, by the way, because it actually backs onto my house. The actual scheme itself is actually an exemplary scheme. If you think about the mix that is in that scheme, because it is social housing with shared ownership, with private, with affordable. So it's everything in one place. And the community cohesion on it would have been absolutely brilliant. The problem that now lays with that is that that's gone 2 years now and we don't know what's going to happen to that site. So you're back to the drawing board. But the residents' engagement on it was second to none because you was there constantly and you did take in the advice of some of the people as well. And I was one of them before I was even a councillor. So that way of dealing with the residents, I think, is a really good thing. I think the mix of the properties is a good thing as well. Council Russell's completely right. Module homes now are quite reasonably cheap. The demand pools put together, and they look absolutely stunning. You wouldn't even know they are actually they're mobile homes and demand pools, and they even come in flats now. So the other thing that I'm really interested as well is we don't do. And I think part of it is because we don't build enough at the moment, so we haven't got the void turnaround to move people out. I don't think we do enough estate renewal, because I think there's a lot of places that would be better with doing estate renewal, and to do all the refurbishment sort of things. I really like that, than to start taking chunks of our green belt, to be frank with you. But so I think there's a lot of mix there. But what I'm also interested in going forward is. We know what we've got. What have we got, really? Because the way we are at the moment, we don't know what assets have been sold, what we're going to keep, what's going on. And if we want to do these, we need some land, not just to sell everything. That's basically what I'm trying to say. But I like the whole ethos of the Culvers and that sort of thing, and the demand balls. Or the mobile homes as well.
Not entirely sure I can add anything other than that I agree with what you're saying. I mean, just two small points. So the in terms of the modular modes of construction, we are actually we have got a project where we absolutely looking at that option to deliver housing. That is actually quite advanced, isn't it, in terms of the design? So we're definitely venturing into other ways of doing it, as opposed to just bricks and mortar, the sort of the traditional way. In terms of the estate regeneration, again, I think it will be the estate renewal. Rather, you mentioned Blackshots and Teviot are very much on our list, and people are working on it day in, day out to deliver. It will be first for our stock, so I'm obviously super sort of excited by it. But you are right, there are kind of areas that would benefit from it over a longer period. It does. It is difficult to make the financial case stuck, and I'm not even saying nowadays with the intervention. I'm saying even before that, because you have got obviously, there's the cost of demolition, of course, but there is a lot of, in particular, some of the more low-rise estates, we've got a lot of ownership. So you've got social houses pepper-dotted with private ownership, and that immediately makes any scheme sort of difficult to get off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, all I was going to add, I mean, obviously, very clear that you want to spend some time on capacity, but actually modern methods of construction and estate renewal are worthy of a session in themselves, if that were you were so minded. And I also do think the what have we got, what is available, is a really important thing. And as I hinted in the earlier remarks, you know, being clear what you've got and what you can use, what is going to have to be sold, what is not. And actually, that isn't just about Evelina and Keith. That is also about the property people coming and saying, right, we've got this. And I think that would be a really useful exploration for you that would help the council generally.
I think Julian will know, obviously, with the land, but I don't think sometimes we're quick enough to help even property developers coming in to the borough. We don't seem to be very good at producing that. I think we're not... it's all right, there's property developers who want to come in to the area, but they're not very... Our officers, and I don't mean to degrade lands or anything like that, but I don't think we're very quick at it. We have lots of pieces of land, lots. A lot of it's held by Bellway, where they've land banked and they're sitting on it now in case of. But we have lots of pockets of land that people don't even know is there, you know. And I think Julian learnt a lot off of me a little while back. But there are lots of land out there. We're perhaps not looking at it in the right way. You know, I think we're not getting back to people very quick, so they tend to move away because we're not very quick in coming forward for them. So, I mean, we have, as far as I know, we have 30 million in pieces of land out there waiting to be sold. So why aren't we moving a bit quicker? If people are wanting to come to the borough, you know, whatever troubles we're in, if they're still wanting to come here, that's good to me. You know, if they still want to come here, then we should be picking them up quicker and going back to them quicker.
No, and I do agree on a lot of that, Councillor. The other thing as well that I think is a bit of an issue for me is the governance. And I think we need to look at streamlining our processes in order to do exactly what Councillor Redhill has just said, that you fast track and we put mechanisms in place in order to get this just moving quickly. And I also truly believe that the negotiation skills were very much, especially if you're going to go in with the private sector, because they will take every single bean they can get out of us. And we councils were never set up to be a company, but we've got to like move really quickly to be commercially minded. So otherwise we're going to be left behind. So it's been really useful, the presentation. Thank you so much, because it gave us a little bit of an idea, me a bit of an idea, because I'm not on the housing. I just deal with the land and the transport going through it and the developments that are not going very well right now, like St Philip Station. So to see housing and what we need to do, but I think it needs to go hand in glove very much with regeneration, because this is not being brought up into regeneration. It should be, and we should not be so quick to sell loads and loads of sites where we can actually keep some for ourselves and be able to put it through on affordable housing with revenue for years to come that will come into the council. And I'm very much into invest to save some time, even though we're in a lot of debt, I know, but you know, it will pay off somewhere. So thank you so much. Is there any other questions that we want to ask?
I just think we've got to be a bit more speculative. We've got to be out there and bringing in, because us as councillors, we probably hear about pieces of land. We hear about people who want to come into the south. Well, obviously we can guide them into here, but then I think that's where it stops sometimes, and we don't. That just doesn't move quick enough, and we lose them. We do. And we lose those good developers, perhaps, because there are not very good ones out there, but there's also some really good developers out there who really want to build. I'm all for not building the same. You know, when you think of housing that was built years ago, it was built with some flair. You know, and you've got to do a bit of that. Give people the right to live somewhere where it looks a bit different. You know, and especially bungalows. We're not. I noticed there's one just gone up Baker Street now, 5 bungalows. So. And they go like hot cakes. They get there and they're gone. You know. So
to be frank, we've got an issue where we're in an ageing population, and we've got very much young people that can't afford their first houses either. So you have to somehow balance that. So thank you. So, Jenny, am I right to agree the date and the items of the next meeting?
Yeah. Let's go on to that item.
Okay. So what would people like to see on work plans for the next meeting?
And when would you like the next one? How far ahead?
What have we actually said on here? Where are the terms of reference? It said we've got 6 months, haven't we?
Yeah.
So how does it fill in with? I'm once every 6 weeks, 2 months. It's really when you can come back with it, say something to us. I'd like to see some really good schemes and what we can do. I'd like to see some. You've shown us what's good and bad, but I would like to see some good schemes, not necessarily in Thurrock, but outside Thurrock, that can be translated into Thurrock quite quickly.
All right, we'll wait for you want.
I'm very much like, sorry.
It seems to be more outside of the borough. Going upwards, they seem to build better. You know, I know we say we've got a lot of space, but we're gradually filling it up. You know, and that isn't always brilliant. You know, people still would like to live a bit rurally. You know, and so I think we've got to do it properly. You know, it's no good sticking, like you just said, it's no good sticking a load of houses in, because that might work. I mean, you mentioned the club at Seabrook Rise, the Tops. Now, those people have lost their community club, and that's happened in quite a few bits that we've done. The clubs that were there have gone. So to me, we need to think more of what we're actually bringing in, or what the developer's bringing in for the community as well. You know, so I think they've got to be a bit. The spec has got to be a bit wider than that. We can't just put people in houses and leave them there. There's got to be something that they can join in. You know, we can't keep taking things away. So I think we've got to, you know, something we've got to do.
And PTR is all about infrastructure. So it's not just about housing. The ONS that I'm on is all about our infrastructure. Have we got the right roads, the right networks, the right buses, the right, everything? So at the next agenda, or at the next meeting, what would you propose to bring us back?
So I was going to go back to that point that we mentioned at the outset about the sort of the other schemes, because you obviously mentioned major projects a lot. You mentioned the per fleet in particular a lot. Obviously, this is not something that I can talk to, or my officers. That's not within my control. But would that be something? And that would then maybe allow that conversation around the sort of the planning side of things as well.
I think what we need to do is I'll speak to Mark Bradbury to actually attend this meeting, or an officer to attend this meeting, and members of PTR come, because we come from the bit of, as I said, all the infrastructure, all the regeneration that is happening, like Purfleet on Thames is happening, and all those that were gone through planning that eventually will come onto the table of PTR. You're about building them out and making sure that they are the right specifications and the right way of building, and that's how we top-tail. So I think, yes, the major projects come through. The thing with this task and finish group, which I think is a really good idea, I think it's something like you said at the beginning, Julian, it came slightly at the wrong time as well, because there is a hell of a lot of things that is the unknown for us right now. For example, Purfleet on Thames right now, don't know if that's going to continue as in the same form it's in. The Culver Centre has stopped. We don't know what's going to happen with that now. We've got half-baked schemes that are going through or have had planning permission going through, and now have had to stop because the money's not there to do it. So there's a whole reef of things where the council right now, from the regeneration point of view, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Julian, and and PTR's point of view, and probably housing, where we did have a plan, it's actually we haven't anymore, because this is what we want it to be, but we just haven't got the finance, or we haven't got the expertise, or we haven't got the negotiation or the commissioning skills, or we haven't got the relationships. And I think that's one of the problems, that we are going to all now be flying in the dark, because sitting behind for members, all members, is eventually going to go into full council will be an asset report that says this is what we're going to get rid of, and then there'll be me and Councillor Redstone and Councillor Shinnett going, well, hold on, we thought there was housing going on there from the Task and Finish group. No, it's not. And I think that's the danger we're in.
So is this something that we maybe...
I think we will have that. You need to have the conversation with the chair of the Housing Overall Scrutiny. But personally, and I don't know how members feel, please tell me if I'm wrong here, but we just don't know where we are right now. We know what we want. We know what we can do. The council's going through a restructure. The council's going through a whole series of best value in different areas. Not just the main report, but now there's peer reviews going all over the place. So I can't definitively say, and you can't say to me, Julian, what land have we got? That is actually HRA land, and we're going to keep, and it's not going to go to be sold. You can't give me that, can you?
No, I can't. And nor, probably more importantly, nor can Mark. I mean, I was just going to hopefully make a helpful observation. To enable you to sort of at least set the base for your study and your deliberations. Why don't you ask Mark to come and do something a bit similar to what we've done from a housing perspective today? So give you the basics of where the infrastructure piece is, where the regeneration piece is, where the land piece is. Because, you're right. Neither he nor I nor Evelyn or anybody else can say definitively that's being sold, that's not, etc. But if you could at least start to get the picture. So why don't you spend next time doing something along those lines with Mark? And then, obviously, we none of us have got clear ideas how quickly these things are going to move. But if we're still a bit in the dark, a couple of months hence, we could then do modern methods of construction and maybe estate renewal, because there are pros and cons to estate renewal. So we can certainly do useful stuff for you. It may not yet be answering all of the things you'd like to answer.
Yeah, I get that, and we can also probably look at the standards of the housing, like you touched on it, Julian, before about at the moment we want premium plus. And the reality is we might not be able to get premium plus. So what does that mean? What?
I mean, Keith can certainly do something on that for you.
Brian?
If I use that, is it going to come up as Councillor Spake?
It does.
Thank you. I was taking a look at the aims of the Task and Finish group, and looking at the capability and the capacity, I think at this point in time is critical. Will there ever be a perfect time to look at it? Probably not, but if there was, that would be the wrong time to look at it as well. So I do think that there's an opportunity for this Task and Finish group to pull together its report of its findings and have that heard. If there is the conversations around assets happening now, if you wait, do you wait too long? So I really think that with that in mind, that there is a good opportunity here. And yes, as officers, we can bring things to you and provide all sorts of information. But that determination of what, as members, you feel the capability capacity is at the moment, I think is important that you get that chance now while things are still being shaped. And I think there was a point raised earlier on about what it is that you want to see being built and how you want that to be delivered. And I don't think that there is that clarity yet. But with the report that comes forward from the Task and Finish group that goes up to the committees it goes to, that can be set out and that can at least be considered.
Well pointed out, Ryan. Thank you. He'll sit there and it's gone. So I think the next meeting we'll invite Mark Bradbury to do his side of what you've just done. Then we can go through what the standards look like and also what the quality is that's going to be coming forward. We're not going to be able to put a figure on how many houses we want because that's as many as you can possibly get. That's going to be Ryan's line. And then I think this needs to be used as a prep that when we actually know what we've got coming, that at least we can go, well, this is a standard we all want to do. Yeah. And I think that's the only way we're going to be able to do it forward. And also, I know there's a council standard anyway, standards of regeneration that probably has to come in, like life. What did you say when they needed to be lifetime, like homes?
The happy ones.
Pardon?
The happy ones?
No, but all homes should be able to have a wheelchair turnaround in them anyway.
Yeah, I thought they were all built.
And I thought every home that was being built had that anyway. It's just that a happy home is 50 plus. And if not, why not? Because there's a lot of young people that's got wheelchairs and in their 30s and 20s and babies and so I already thought everything was lifetime standard anyway under the regulations, and yours said it's not.
No, it's not. No, there's no such requirement, actually. And it's not also an ambition that we are signed up to. Obviously, this is why it's important to have that debate is that something that we would like to sign up to, going back to those sort of principles that would then underpin that strategy. But no, it's not a standard at the moment.
I think we probably need all those standards back here as well if we can have those as well. So yeah,
So we'll arrange the next meeting in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
You'll speak to Mark Bradbury.
I'll
about
speak.
Attending to present very similar.
What?
Sorry. Yeah, you agree that, yes.
First time we've told Jenny off. Yeah, so I'll speak to Mark Bradbury about doing a presentation about the regeneration side of it. And he will dovetail in with you, Julian, all the time, though, doesn't he? Must do. He's got to, otherwise it's not going to work. And then we can then have another conversation about the standards and what we're looking at. Is that okay with you, Ryan?
By all means.
Brilliant. Councillor Redfield.
Can I just? We've got also as I chair the LDF, we've got another LDF coming up in September. So I thought that was too long away, but it's now it's getting nearer anyway. So we'll let it go. Sort of, I don't mind it coming. But you mentioned earlier on about infrastructure, and I don't think that may be something this committee should be looking at, because I remember sitting on the same committees 10 years ago for lorry parks and God knows what, and we still haven't done it, and it's those sort of things that you think. I mean, I went round, I think my borough and another ward that counted 80 lorries in, and we don't need a lorry park. Of course we need a lorry park, we're a lorry hub, and you were saying about water. If we build all these houses, our water system can't cope. Our sewerage can't cope. We've just seen that along Lodge Lane. It looks like a new town going up, doesn't it? You live in a pipe.
Sorry, Councillor, what did I say before the meeting, what was going to happen with Councillor Redseal? We're going to start talking about water, black shots.
But it's right, though. It affects
you've got a point in the LGF, is that.
It is. If we don't do the infrastructure to start with, all this what we're doing isn't going to work. Because we need people in front of us to talk to us and tell us, if the water system can't cope, the sewerage system can't cope, it's no good us building thousands of houses because we're not going to cope. Yeah. So Sorry to put a downer on it. But
No, that's fine. So I will speak to Mark. Evelina, I'll touch base with you and we'll get the agenda together on this and then send it out to the Vice Chair and like me and Councillor Redfield. And then if we do that in 6 weeks' time. Yeah, that okay? Thanks, Jenny.
I don't know when the LGF is. Jenny, is it 6th?
I don't know.
September? Oh, that one.
It's the beginning of September, isn't it? It's in September.
It's not far into September.
No. So, is there any other business? No. Okay, so at 7:25, this meeting's now closed. Thank you.